So congrats to you both on Kung Fu Panda 4. And Mike, I was curious, you've been involved in this franchise for a long time. You were the creative consultant on the first, you EP'd the third. What was most interesting about really taking the reins this time around, being the director and getting to tell, the story that you wanted to tell within this universe this time?
Well, the most intense thing was I'm such a fan of this franchise. We didn't want to move forward until we knew that we had a great story to tell. And strangely, my favorite thing about the Kung Fu Panda franchise are these villains. I just think they make the greatest villains in any animated film. I just think these are the best villains of all time. So we were the only thing that got me nervous was like, is this villain going to be as intense as the previous three villains? And I feel that we pulled it off. And once we had the cast, Viola, and once we had the design, and then Sean did some test animation footage of her supernatural powers, we're like, all right, now we're ready. So it was confidence from that moment out for me.
And Sean, one of the great things about this film is Poe's giving up the Dragon Warrior title, and that introduces Zen, who's voiced by Aquafina. How was it kind of bringing in this new character who, this is also a return for the series since it had been out from films for a while. So, what did you like most about talk me through just designing that character and the animation effort for Zen?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest challenges with the film. We knew that she had to kind of hold her own against Poe, comedically and even maybe physicality wise. We wanted to make sure that she was pretty substantial. So early on, we knew that she was going to be a Corsic fox. So we did a lot of different designs of her, but we settled on one. And I think one of the challenges was how does she even walk? Because she's a quadruped. So does she walk like a plantigrade and plant her feet? Like Bugs Bunny, and that's how it's been done typically in a lot of animated films. Or does she walk on her toes like a digitigrade? So we did some tests early on. We showed it to Mike, and Mike's like, "Yeah, I really like when she walks on her toes." So that was like one of the first challenges, like how does she even move around? And then we found a lot of really cool footage of real foxes, and then we watched everything that Aquafina had done. And one of my favorite things was Nora from Queens. She was so funny in that show, and we used a lot of like clips from it. We looked at her facial expression. So yeah, we tried to infuse as much Aquafina into the film as possible to make Jen a really memorable character. And I love the way she turned out.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was like Sean took us all to like Fox College for a while. Like I learned so much about even the bones and the tails of a fox. It was really interesting. But you know what I love too is Sean and his crew were very specific. It's such great contrast with the big kung fu panda and this little agile fox. And in the fighting sequences, they really like dug into the fighting styles that each one had. So there's a lot of great contrast that happened
Yeah,
after
we
our.
were yeah, we were like, what is fox style? Maybe she uses her tail in a certain way. And like, there's so many discussions on the animated film that are so funny. Like, we must have looked at her size comparisons to Poe probably 100 times.
Yeah.
Like showing Mike, like, what about this size? Or how
Yeah.
big is your tail? We showed like swatches of maybe it's this big, this big, this big, this big, and then you kind of settle on one. So yeah, there's so many
The
conversations before
giant
you
tail, by
settle
the
in
way.
on it.
These guys did such a terrific job. That tail is bigger than she is. What a
Yeah,
what a pain, literal pain in the ass
yeah,
to
especially for
animate that
CFX.
tail.
They had a hard time with it.
They did a great job.
they definitely did. And Mike, this film's been such a great success at the box office, and the brand's stayed strong in the interim between films. But we're at a very interesting point for this series where the people have really grown up with it. So there's a nostalgia factor, but you're also reaching a whole new audience of kids as well with this. So, what was kind of your point of view of making this both a return, but also using Zen as kind of like an introduction point for the newer fans as well. So how is it kind of blending those perspectives?
That was the goal, Tyler, but it was really fascinating because we didn't want to leave the super fans behind, that grew up with this thing. And exactly like what you said, we wanted to introduce it to a new audience. So behind the scenes, there was a lot of intense, passionate discussions about, what direction to go in, and it felt like mostly my job was just like, just listening to everyone and hearing where their passion lies and trying my best to move in the direction where it just felt like that mostly we wanted to satisfy the fans. Like it seems like all those people got, first and foremost, we kind of went in that direction because we're super fans as well. Like we grew up on this as well. Everyone working on it, even the animators, there's some of Sean's animators that were on all the movies, part 1, 2, and 3. So it was not easy, but it was a lot of fun to hear where people's passion lies. If anything, the only thing that I think we might have strayed from is some of the old school fans really wanted to get dark. They wanted to like murder a lot of characters, which seems
they wanted to kill Shifu.
Yeah, they all wanted to kill Shifu, and that was the one thing that we had the biggest discussions about. And man, remember, Sean, we listened to everyone. Sean would take votes. There was voting that happened with like large groups of people. It was really fascinating and interesting. But I feel personally that we made all the right choices to especially for this thing to continue on if they want to keep making more. You know,
Well,
I'm just
Mike
imagining like Survivor events of killing off these adorable animal creatures.
Well, it's really strange. From the first Kung Fu Panda to now, I think the audience has grown up and changed. And certainly you could cite like a something like Harry Potter started off as like this PG G-rated movie, and by the end it was like a horror film. Harry Potters were terrifying. So it makes sense that, you know, we got to intensify, but we decided to intensify our fight sequences, and so and that felt like a lot more joyful.
You know, one cool thing was, like Mike said, like we're all fans of the franchise. You know, like I didn't work on the first couple, but I loved them, and we had a lot of newer animators on the show that were also kids when the first one came out. So they were super fans, and it was like their dream come true to work on a Kung Fu Panda movie.
Yeah, had tears in their eyes, like, oh my God, I can't believe I get to work on this. This is what got me into animation.
Yeah, 100%. Like we had this one girl, Kitty Fung, like when she was actually a student of mine like 10 years ago at Animation Mentor, and she loved Tigress. She would do fan art of it, and she sent me fan art of like how much she loved it. So then, you know, cut to 10 years later, now she's actually animating Tigress. So yeah, we definitely wanted to make sure the fans were happy because we were all fans as well.
I said this last time too, but Kitty knows martial art, and so does Sean as a black belt. Like a lot of people, a lot of our artists were martial artists as well. So it was like, it just made the film even better, I think.
We were thinking of setting up like an octagon in the back, and maybe we could all fight like during lunch.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. And my last question, Sean, there's some concept art where like there might have been a human village. Was that discussed early on, or how far did that make it?
Yeah, I think early on, I think we had talked about maybe having like humans in the film, right? And I think, yeah, I don't know if any of that's going to be in the art of book, but yeah, I think there's an art of book coming out in a few months, right, Mike? Yeah.
Yep. It's
maybe you
beautiful.
could talk to that, yeah.
Here's the thing. I think early on, I think we discussed everything, Tyler. So some really weird things leaked out, but it's like, we just cover all of our bases before we hone into like the story that we want to tell. So it gets wacky in these early stages of development, man. You should have heard the early days of Trolls was such a drug-induced trip. You have no idea. There's so much design that we talked about that was never made it in the film. But that was another thing, Tyler, that I appreciate you bringing up is all these early discussions we have before we move forward. There was so much story to tell that just, you know, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe we'll see that in the future versions of Kung Fu Panda in the future of the franchise. But there was so much that we tried to fit into this film. We just did our best to put in all the best ideas that we had.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time. And Mike, I just wanted to say I'm a big Deuce Bigelow fan. I can't believe it's 25 years. I'm seeing Rob next week. So just congrats on that anniversary.
I said hi. Tell him let's make another Deuce Bigelow. I think it's time because just like Shifu and Oogway, I think it's time for Rob to mentor a younger man whore and to carry on the tradition. I think that's a great franchise that was stopped too soon. I'm ready.
That'd be incredible.
I agree.
Make more.
Well, deal. Thank you guys.
Wait, Tyler, why are you seeing Rob Schneider?
I'm just seeing him do stand up. He's touring.
Oh man, you got to sneak backstage and talk to him. I'm sure he's lonely. He's got no one to talk to.